What's going on, squad? It's your man Unspoken, and we're back with another review of Star Wars The Acolyte, Episode 3, entitled Destiny. All right, guys, so I know that there has been a lot of negative buildup up to this episode. Despite that, I decided to watch it for myself and get my own review of it and what I thought. This time I'm going to switch it up a little bit more by going in no particular order, but just talking about what I thought about the episode. I'm going to give off some of the major plot points that came up, but also at the end, I'm going to talk about what I thought of the episode. And if you guys like the video, please hit the like button and let me know what you guys thought in the comments. And let me know what you guys thought about The Acolyte Episode 3, or what have you guys thought about the series thus far? And has this been a good Star Wars show for you, a bad Star Wars show for you, or do you feel that it has changed dramatically from what you remember? All right, so this episode is pretty much a flashback episode, basically taking up all the details from the previous two episodes, episode 1 and 2, about certain key details that we've heard from the main characters from both the protagonist and the antagonist side, regarding the fire that killed the coven, the apologies that have been made between the characters, certain decisions that were made, actions that have been taken against the Jedi on behalf of what people believe is right or wrong. And this episode picks up on the planet of Brendok. It's 16 years earlier. We get to meet a young May and Osha as children, and we actually find out their names are actually Mayho Anastasia and Varosha Anastasia. So when it comes to the sisters, we have kind of what is considered a light leaning and a dark leaning. Osha kind of seems more light leaning, while May in her actions kind of seem more dark leaning. Osha doesn't want to seem to stay with the coven. She kind of has the idea of what else is out there in the galaxy, whereas May is a little bit more focused on the coven and is excited about what is considered the ascension. The ascension, I guess, is them moving on to the next phase of life with their coven and taking on an oath to protect their secrets. We'll come back to that shortly. But we actually get to meet a new character from their past called Mother Corell. And it's actually been explained later on in the episode that Mother Corell was the one that carried the twins to term. We meet Mother Anastasia, who is actually their biological mother, who could not carry them to term for reasons unknown, or for reasons how that happened. I'm not exactly sure. So prior to the ceremony, we also get to see that the Witches Coven has some access to using the Force. They are able to access that energy, even though they sometimes talk about it in a different way according to how the Jedi or Sith talk about it. They consider the Force their own type of power that they use. We get to see them use this in a training session with both May and Osha. May seems to show more of an aggression with using the power, whereas May is a little bit more laid back and not willing to be as violent, or doesn't want to use it as much as she should be using it. They go ahead and through with the ceremony, despite Osha saying that she's not exactly certain if she wants to do it. May ends up going through with the ceremony, and that is where she gets the mark on the one side of her head. As Osha is getting ready to take on the oath and complete the ceremony, she hesitates for a minute, and we find out shortly after that the Jedi have arrived. The Jedi have come to the coven, and they have come to talk to them regarding them teaching children. The Jedi don't seem at all upset about the fact that this coven is using the Force. I think around this time, it is not uncommon that there are other factions that do have the Force outside of the Jedi and the Sith. So it seems like they're not at all upset about them using the Force, but they are concerned about the idea that they are training children, that they are indeed passing on knowledge of how to use the Force to adolescent children who may not have any control over what they're doing with that type of power. And as they are worried about this, the coven is worried that they've come to take their children, but the Jedi argue that that's not what they do, and that they are not there to steal anything from anyone. They just want to make sure that the children are not being led down a dark path. And despite, however, the coven might feel, the ability to use the Force in the way, the method in which they're using it, can be considered corrupt depending on who gets their hand on it. Osha beckons May to come forward, and Saul shows Osha what exactly a Jedi's weapon is and asks her if she would like to use it. Sparks some anger from the coven, as they say that, they are worried about the Jedi being there and that they should leave. We do get a moment where Mother Anastasia, or maybe one of the coven, I'm not exactly sure, end up taking over Torben's mind in an attempt to hurt him or take him out of his right mind. The Jedi offer May and Osha to take what is considered a test to see about their Jedi Force ability. The test is not really something that can be denied. The Jedi do have the right under the Republic law to be able to test Force-sensitive children. And because they put this offer out there, the Coven has no choice but to follow and do as they say. Also get an idea of how the Coven view the Jedi, which is something that it didn't really surprise me as much when Mother Corell calls them deranged monks. It's something that I think a lot of people are mad about when watching the series. However, it does not really surprise me that there are other factions out there that do not like the Jedi. Mother Corell distastes the idea of them training with the Jedi, and despite this, Mother Anastasia decides to allow them to go and decides to allow them to make the decision themselves. If you guys are familiar with the Phantom Menace, in order to prove that he was Force sensitive, Anakin had to list off each of the items that was on the pictures that the council was looking at. May goes first, and Osha follows up after her. Before they go, though, May asks Osha to lie about it so that she doesn't go with them. Osha begins lying. However, as time goes on, Saul starts to catch on and manages to trick Osha into answering differently so that way she would correct herself. We also find out that Saul ended up joining the Jedi Order when he was 4 years old and truly tells Osha that there's nothing wrong with being a Jedi and that it is a great opportunity, but only an opportunity that she can choose, but that she must have the courage to tell the truth. Osha this time does pass the test, and despite how sad she is, Mother Anastasia does allow Osha to go with the Jedi, as Osha has decided that she would like to leave the Coven. Still angry about this, May confronts Osha and threatens to kill her, locking her inside the room and setting fire to, I think it's some biblical text that the Coven does have. Osha manages to escape the room, but despite this, the rest of the Coven's mountain is beginning to burn and catch fire, and we hear several witches screaming from different directions above Osha as she's trying to escape. The rest of the mountain somehow catches fire, and we're not exactly sure how that's happening. Well, as May and Osha meet again, they're trying to figure out which one of them has set events in motion that is causing the fire to happen. May seemingly dies, but Saul ends up appearing at the last minute and manages to save Osha. We actually come upon the bodies of the Witches' Coven, and this includes Mother Anastasia. Somehow each of them has been, killed. And it seems that May has survived as she is looking at the Bunta tree, trying to find Osha, as she believes that this is the place that she would always find her. And that concludes episode 3. All right, guys. So I know a lot of people had a bunch of mixed feelings, more angry feelings than actual good feelings about this episode and the idea of Star Wars. However, this episode didn't exactly piss me off. More importantly, it kind of reinstated what was already there that we already knew. Now, I will not lie about this episode. The acting was very wooden. I'm not going to sit here and act like the acting was top notch. It was pretty bad. Listening to how the characters speak to each other, the dryness in their voices, it just didn't feel like, they were really acting. It felt like they were all reading off of papers. Now, as far as I have seen, there are a lot of fans of Star Wars that are pretty upset about the episode based off of certain things like the different factions, the power of one or the power of two, the chant that is said between the Witches' Coven compared to what we believe about the Force. However, it's not uncommon in the Star Wars lore that there are other factions who do have control over the Force. That also leads to the idea that people will make up their own rules about what they believe is good enough or not. Remember what Mother Anastasia says. She says that this isn't about, choice, this is about power and who gets to decide to wield it. They have the way of using the Force the way they think is right, whereas the Jedi have a decision to what they believe is right, just as much as the Sith have the idea of what they believe is right. And each faction uses the Force how they think is necessary. Now, that's not to say either side is right or wrong, but some sides can lead more towards negative outcomes, which is why the Jedi even show up to try to stop them from training the children. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I do recognize the propaganda speech in this episode that is making some people angry. Certain dialogue such as, they won't understand people like us. some of that propaganda is front and center. And I will say, as a television fan or a Star Wars fan, you don't really need those things in the episode to make the episodes great. You don't need to push that type of propaganda speak or, you know, in order to make the series stand out. And I think that's what's been kind of upsetting a lot of the Star Wars fans. Now, the one thing I did like that the episode did was how the propaganda speech didn't just go in towards the script, but it also went into the characters and the world around them. You know, people often, like, as fans of the show, we often love Star Wars. We always love the Jedi show. You have to understand that this is a show about how the Sith manipulate, how they act, how they move, how one can become an acolyte to become a Sith. You know, I think that that's what a lot of people are missing. The idea of how the Witch's Coven or Mother Corell, pretty much sees the Jedi as deranged monks is nothing that I haven't heard in different types of Star Wars lore, right? If you're looking at the Star Wars movies or the Star Wars games, there's always characters or NPC characters in video games that bash the Jedi for how they act. If you guys don't believe me, if any of you have played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, you'll know a character named Atton Rand who talked about this in great detail, where he talked about how it was possible to kill a Jedi and how the world or the rest of the galaxy viewed the Jedi. Don't believe me? You can always look it up on YouTube. Just look up Atton Rand. You'll find out about it. However, it just surprises me that so many people are upset about the Jedi and how they're treated in this episode. This is not a Jedi show. Now, as far as the events that were coming into the show, a lot of people probably thought that we didn't get all the details we needed. I don't think they wanted to give away so many details because there's no way the fire that May started was the thing that burned down this entire mountain. That's impossible. Now, whether or not the Jedi are responsible for killing the Coven, or perhaps maybe the Sith might be responsible, seems like there is another player. I cannot say for sure, but the way events have unfolded and the way that the Coven acted towards the situation, or the way May acted, makes me wonder who was working the background. So more than likely there was a Sith or a Sith Master that was orchestrating events to be certain that either the Coven died or that May was turned to the dark side. All in all, I didn't think the episode was as bad as most people thought. Will I say the acting was pretty bad? Yes, but this was pretty much just a flashback episode, an episode designed to fill in the gaps and the questions that the audience had. And I plan on still watching it towards the end to give an idea of what I think about it. Pretty much when the show is over, I think I'm going to give a big full review on what I believe about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.